would like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Vallecitos Water District, May 15th, 2024. Thank you, Christian. Appreciate that. We extend a special welcome to parents and the fifth grade class from La Costa Meadows. Two what? Two fifth grade classes. That's why there's so many. Thank you. You guys were doing so well. You're being quiet, and I appreciate that. We're glad you're here. Like some of you said, this is our favorite meeting all year long. So I appreciate you being here. Appreciate the parents and the staff and teachers. Thank you. Before we begin, I would like to announce that members of the public may watch the meeting via live computer or smart device by going to the district's website and clicking on the Watch Live icon. However, they will not be able to participate in the meeting remotely. Members of the public may also listen to the meeting live on their phone by dialing 888-788-0099. And when prompted, enter the meeting ID and passcode displayed on the district's website. And we'd like to begin. And Olivia's been asked to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Olivia, and thank you, Christian. Directors, please indicate your attendance. All are present. We would like to excuse Director Boyd Hodgson. She is actually up in Sacramento at a water tour conference. So we will miss her, but she's out working. Thank you. And so you guys know, are you guys nervous? Me too. Guess what? This is the first meeting I have ever directed myself, so we can be nervous together. Is that all right? Hopefully that relieves some of your nerves. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda for the regular meeting of May 15th, 2024?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Director Hernandez, seconded by Director Elithart. Please vote. Passes unanimously. Do we have any public speakers?
No, we do not, Vice President Pennock.
No public speakers, but looks like there's a presentation. GM Gumpel, I understand we have students from the La Costa Meadows Elementary School, two fifth grade classes, who participated in a water leadership program and will be making a presentation to the board.
Yes, absolutely. And this is also one of my favorite meetings, and we get to welcome back our old general manager, Glenn Prum.
Hey.
Just I want to point out, he's still looking over my shoulders even today. So with that, I want to hand this over to Chris to introduce the class, but I'm very excited to see the presentation and also hear these wonderful children talk about water leadership.
Thank you, General Manager, Vice President Pennock, members of the board. Special day for all of us. It's always fun to have two classes full of students here at the Vallecitos Water District. Smiling faces everywhere you look. We have Mrs. Harris and Mrs. Pruim's classes. So La Costa Meadows is in the house. And truly, you don't want to listen to me anymore. We want these presentations. So I'm actually going to turn over my staff table to Jean Pruim, and she is going to get us started with this presentation with the La Costa Meadows students.
Are you guys ready? Yes. I'm just clicking through the slideshow. This is all you.
Good evening, Vallecitos Water District. My name is Christian, and for the past month or so, Mrs. Brum's class and Mrs. Harris's class have been learning all about water and its variety of uses. We participated in Water Resource Management Leadership Program, a curriculum developed by Poseidon Education that covers 5th grade science standards related to water. Hi, I'm Bryson. In this amazing program, we learned about the limited supply of water on Earth, as well as potable water, wastewater, stormwater, irrigation, and reclaimed water administrations. We also discussed global and local problems with water. Lastly, we investigated water use at our school, found problems, and came up with solutions to help our school better manage this very important resource.
Thanks, Bryson and Christian. Hi, my name is Emma, and I'm here to talk about the 326 million trillion gallons of water here on Earth. The amount of water on Earth that is drinkable is incredibly scarce, so we must save and conserve all the water we can. Of all the water on Earth, 97% of it is salty ocean water. That means only 3% of the water on Earth is fresh. Shockingly, 2% of that fresh water is trapped in polar ice caps, completely useless to humans. The other 1% is split into 0.9% groundwater, which is only available through wells, and 0.1% surface water, which includes all of the water in lakes, rivers, and streams. Therefore, only 0.1% of Earth's water is easily accessible for humans. It is important for us to conserve water so we can all do our part to save as much water as we can.
Thank you very much, Emma. Hi, my name is Olivia, and for many years, people had to walk or live near water sources like lakes or ponds. But later on, the ancient Romans built aqueducts to transport water from one source to another. Today, we use aqueducts to carry water from Northern California to Southern California. This is because there's more water in the northern part of our state, but more people live in the southern. The State Water Project was developed in 1961 to bring water to Southern California. Now it carries water more than 700 miles through a system of aqueducts and canals to dams and reservoirs in Southern California.
Thanks, Olivia. My name is Scarlett. In class, we learned how the Vallecitos Water District provides us with water and how they track how much we use. First of all, wholesalers sell water from various sources to retail water agencies. Those retail water agencies then treat the water and spread the water throughout the area through a system of pipes and meters. In total, there are 1,286 water districts and agencies in California. The Vallecitos Water District provides potable water to homes, schools, parks, and businesses in San Marcos and Carlsbad, La Costa Meadows, of course, being in the Carlsbad area. Special guest Mr. Tapia from Vallecitos came to our school to show us what water meters are and teach us how they worked. And we examined a recent water bill for La Costa Meadows and discovered that we pay a little less than 1 cent per gallon of potable water.
Hello and thank you, Scarlett. My name is Madeline. We learned that potable water is clean drinking water that is safe for human consumption. We did an experiment where we tasted water from different areas, including the water from the student water bottle filler, the filtered water in the teacher's lounge, bottled water, and tap water. We were surprised to find out that tap water was the favorite and that bottled water was the least favorite. We also learned that if we replaced our clean drinking water at school with single-use plastic bottled water, it would cost our school around $1.4 million per month.
Hello, I'm Chase, and this is my partner, Anson. We're presenting about how we use water here at La Costa Meadows. We use this valuable resource in many different ways, including irrigation or watering plants, restrooms, food prep, student use, cleaning, flushing toilets, and our custodian's washing machine. We went around campus and measured the flow rate of our faucets. We used a pitcher that was measured in ounces and held it under the sink and ran it for 10 seconds. We wrote down the number of ounces of water in the pitcher.
After we were done with that, we converted the measurement to gallons per minute. We found out that the flow rate of the classroom sinks is only 1.5 gallons per minute. The sinks in the student bathrooms have a flow rate of 0.5 gallon per minute because there are flow restrictors on those sinks. We think the pressure in the classroom sinks is too high, and we might be wasting water that goes down the drain. Now I'm going to pass it off to Winnabelle and Amy.
Thank you, Chase and Anson. Hello, we are Winnabelle and Amy. We are here to talk to you today about how students at our school wash their hands. We observed students in kindergarten through 5th grade washing their hands. As we watched them, we noticed how the numbers of seconds changed among the different age levels.
We learned that as children got older, they learned to wash their hands better. Younger grade students took between 5 and 10 seconds, while the higher grade students took closer to 15 seconds. Interestingly, almost no students washed their hands for the recommended 20 seconds. We also asked them about their hand washing habits so we could gather data about how many times on average students wash their hands at school.
Thank you, Winnabelle and Amy. Good evening. My name is Sam, and I'm here to address the data we found from hand washing at our school. We calculated there were 3,297 student hand washes every day at our school, which works out to about 479.43 gallons of water daily, and more than 13,400 gallons per month being used just for student hand washing. The cost of that water is $119.47 each month. Thank you for listening, and I'll pass it on to Adrena and Olivia A., or just Olivia A.
Hello, I am Olivia A. Thank you, Sam. We are here to tell you about the enemies of our drains and wastewater. First, water becomes wastewater when it makes contact with a human. Wastewater may contain food scraps, oils, soaps, pollutants, and chemicals. In other words, it is used water. Some things should never go down the drain, and these enemies of the wastewater system include flushable wipes, dental floss, grease, and fat. These things clump together into huge clogs called fatbergs. Fatbergs clog sewer pipes, which can cause huge problems for communities since the last thing people want is sewers overflowing. Wastewater can harm living things, but scientists have learned how to reclaim and treat this water so it can be used again. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia and Adrena. Good evening, Vallecitos Water District. I'm Kian, and I'm going to be talking about reclaimed water. First, reclaimed water is wastewater that has undergone a series of physical, chemical, and biological cleaning process to remove pollutants so the water can be used again. Although reclaimed water is not treated to the same standards as potable water, it is good, clean water, and it's perfect for irrigation. Golf courses, city parks, neighbor landscaping, and sports fields are ideal places to use recycled water.
Thanks, Keon. I'm Nina. About 99% of wastewater can be reclaimed, treated, and used again as recycled water. This reclaimed water does not mix with potable water. It is delivered to customers through a system of purple pipes. We learned that Vallecitos Water District reclaims about 875 million gallons of recycled water each year.
Thank you, Nina and Keon. My name is Jane, and tonight I will talk to you about irrigation at La Costa Meadows Elementary School. During this program, we went around our school and looked for irrigation equipment. We found irrigation control boxes, sprinklers, bubblers, and drip irrigation. Mr. Alvaro from the school district showed us how our irrigation system worked. We discovered that many sprinklers in the front of the school are not working properly. This is because students at LCM are running through the planters and stepping on the sprinklers. And the ground maintenance crews have accidentally cut off the tops of their sprinklers with their weed whackers.
Hello there, my name is Indy. One of the worst areas of our school is the lower field where we do PE. What we found was horrific. The majority of all the sprinkler heads were either buried, broken, or leaking. When sprinkler heads are in the ground, they cause water to go onto the ground instead of onto the grass. This means that it's only getting to the swale near the sprinkler, not everywhere else, which leads to a pumpy and
patchy and bumpy lower field. Another problem we found was drip irrigation. Rodents are chewing through the hoses and the holes lead to overspray. Drip irrigation is spraying water onto the sidewalks while other areas aren't getting any water and the plants are dying. One last problem is that we're using potable water for irrigation. We could save so much money if we used reclaimed water instead of potable water. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Callie. We're here to discuss stormwater. First things first, stormwater is rainfall or water collected from storms. As you know, we have devices called gutters that collect water that runs down roofs. Then it goes down downspouts and eventually makes its way into the storm drains, which carries water all the way to the ocean. That means anything that is on the ground could be carried into the stormwater system and find its way into the Pacific Ocean.
Hi, my name is Eden. Some of the storm drains on campus are located a long distance away from the downspouts, causing big puddles to collect on the blacktop and sidewalks. If water doesn't go down storm drains, it forms big puddles and discolors the pavement. This year, the district fixed this problem with Building A, but we'd really appreciate it if you helped with relocating storm drains outside of buildings B and C as well. Thank you for listening to us.
Hi, my name is Marin. Throughout this program, we have learned a lot about global issues with water, such as water scarcity. The average person in the United States uses about 100 gallons of water a day. In places where water is scarce, people are restricted to using only about 1 or 2 gallons of water a day. We must save as much water as we can because kids like us have been living through drought conditions in California our whole lives. This is a cause close to my heart, and I don't want other kids in my school to live with this their whole lives. A major problem is litter, specifically plastic pollution. Plastics take about 450 years to break down, and they never fully decompose. They just break into even smaller, microscopic pieces. This is an issue because these pollutants can get into potable water and into the ocean, which can harm sea animals if eaten. It also creates huge garbage patches that leak oils into the ocean.
Thank you, Marin. Good evening. My name is Cora. We also identified some problems with water use at our school. One problem we found was that drain pipes are not leading into the storm drains, and instead all the water is collecting on the pavement. The second biggest problem I discovered was watering our plants and grass with potable water. This is wasting perfectly good water that we could drink. Again, water is very limited on Earth, so we need to save as much of it as we can. Extra problems we see at home are leaving the sink running while washing our hands or brushing our teeth, doing small loads of laundry, toilet leaks, lengthy showers, and overwatering your lawn.
Thank you, Marin and Cora. My name is Addie. I will be discussing some solutions to the water problems at our school. One of the problems we found is the trash at our school. Litter on campus winds up going down the storm drains and eventually to the ocean. One way to help keep our campus clean is we started the Talking Trash program a couple of years ago where students help clean up litter after lunch and recess. We would like to ask Vallecitos Water District to replace the trash grabbers that broke. Could you possibly donate 10 trash grabbers to the school this year? Another problem was the trash that's actually in the storm drains. To fix this problem, we would like to ask Vallecitos for 2 plumber snake grabbers to clean out the storm drains. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to pass it on to my friend Paige.
Was that Lily?
I don't know, sweetie.
Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Paige. We each did a toilet leak test and discovered that many of us have small leaks at home that are wasting potable water. We are hoping Vallecitos Water District could donate about 60 more toilet leak test kits so we could give 1 to every 5th grade family at school so they can find and fix leaks. Finally, because rodents chew through the drip irrigation at school, a possible solution would be to get some better quality drip hoses and start watering the plants more. Also, some kids walk through the planters and kick and bend the sprinklers, so students So maybe we could make signs to remind students not to walk through the planters. Thank you.
Thank you, Addie and Paige. My name is Sophie. A better way to help our community's water system is we could do a STEAM project where we plant air plants around our school so we can use less water in the planting. We would also like to contact the San Marcos Unified School District to inform them about all of the problems with our sprinklers and drip irrigation so they can replace broken equipment.
Thank you, Sophie. My name is Lily. Another solution to reduce how much water we use is that fifth graders can make signs for student restrooms, teaching little kids how to wash their hands by stopping the water as they soak up. At our school, we do a video once a month called the Dolphin Daily. Maybe we could teach the other classrooms about ways to use less water in the next one.
During these science lessons, we learned that water is a limited resource on Earth. We also found out that we have potable water in our irrigation systems instead of reclaimed water. We have put together a water resource management plan that summarizes our learning and makes recommendations about ways to solve some of the problems we discovered. With the way we use our water on our school campus, we would like to present a copy of our management plan to the Vallecitos board tonight. Would it be okay if I handed the report to the board president?
Yes.
We are very grateful to the Vallecitos Water District Board and thank them for allowing us to present our findings and sponsoring the Water Management Leadership Program from Poseidon Education. We deeply appreciated all the help we received from the guests and the parent volunteers who participated in the program. We thank Poseidon Education for creating this program for our class. We would also like to thank Mr. Tapia for showing us the pipes and water meters that Vallecito uses to provide water to our school, and Mr. Alvaro from SMUSD for demonstrating how our irrigation system works. We thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I would now like to open it up for questions and comments.
So questions and comments. Can I go with this or run with it? First of all, are you guys sure you're in fifth grade? That was like a college presentation. You guys did awesome. I think you need another round of applause. I mean, that was awesome. I mean, first, the content of your message was fabulous. So thank you. The content was great. You guys look great. So I want to commend the parents and grandparents and everybody that's here. Thank you. You've done amazing things with your kids. They're awesome. So, I don't know, I'm getting a little emotional, but I mean, I see future directors and operators and engineers and GMs, and you guys are really, really great. Thank you for that message. I have just some clarification things. Can you answer those for me? I wanted to make sure we got your requests. So first of all, thank you for the water resource management plan. That's awesome. We will review that and see what we can do. So you wanted some trash grabbers?
Yes, 10.
10 trash grabbers. You're taking notice, right?
I'm taking notes.
Okay. He's going to be on the hook. And if not, Mr. Prum behind him will look over his shoulder and make sure. And then you wanted 2 snake grabbers?
Yes.
Okay. What are those for again?
Cleaning out the storm drains.
All right. And then you wanted a bunch, like 60 toilet kit testers?
Yes.
Yeah? And what do those do again?
They test for toilet leaks.
Okay, and you need 60. There's a lot of toilets at Costa Meadows, huh? All right. Anything else besides those 3? I wanted to make sure we had those 3.
I don't think so.
Those 3 will do it? Okay. Yes?
So, Vice President Pennock, I'm happy to report that this class and both classes that took this, it didn't cost us any money. Mrs. Prim and Mrs. Harris, they did this on their own. Mrs. Harris is going to take this on next year. So there was no specific expense for this, and there is money within the Water Conservation Public Information budget for the items that La Costa Meadows listed. So we will certainly make those purchases.
Okay, that would be great. We'd love to have a follow-up to make sure that does
There was
happen.
also
Yes.
one more thing that I forgot.
There's always one more thing. Uh-oh. Lay it on us. And is Mrs. Harris here? Is this Mrs. Harris?
Drip
There's Mrs.
irrigation.
Okay, I want to make sure. Okay. Which one?
Drip irrigation.
Drip?
Drip irrigation.
Drip
Oh, drip irrigation.
irrigation.
You want drip irrigation. So is that something we work with, or do we work with the, we're going to work with San Marcos Unified on that one, it sounds like, right? So drip irrigation. There's always, is there another one more thing?
No.
Now's your chance. You're at the podium, you know. All right. Well, thank you. I mean, seriously, you guys look great, sounded great. Your presentation was just very professional. Mrs. Prum, Mrs. Harris, thank you so much. What a great presentation. Any other comments or? Yes.
Hey everyone, my name is Director Eric Grosset, and I'm your neighbor. And I want to thank the kids for doing such an exceptional job on this presentation. You knocked it out of the park, and I have to say, this is especially special to me because I have a first grader at La Costa Meadows, Emerson Grosset, who goes to school every day and looks up to you all. And I know it's especially meaningful. You visited her class and timed her washing her hands, and it's a lasting memory that has changed her outlook on water conservation and has led to many positive conversations. And one of the ideas was to input the learnings into the Dolphin Daily, and I know that that's something that she really looks forward to seeing every day at school, so I think that's a great idea. And again, thank you to the parents for bringing them all in tonight and involving them in this, and thank you so much to Mrs. Prum and Mrs. Harris for putting this very important program on. And I just want you all to think of this not as only something today, but something in the future that you can work in water and conservation and saving the world. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to second all of that, and I'd just like to thank you for the very professional presentations. I've been in this business about 38 years, and I took a full page of notes, so I learned something tonight. So you can teach an old dog new tricks. Anyway, thank you very much. Some great ideas, and I learned so much about hand washing. I can't believe it.
Thank you.
This was an excellent presentation. And I'm going to go a little different here because I'm a public speaker. And I heard every word without an and or an or a yeah or a like or any of the catchphrases that normally individuals use when they speak. You listen to people talk, and I will guarantee you 90% of them will go, and today we had, and we did this like, and that presentation was flawless. Continue to do that throughout your entire life, because one of the things that's gotten me where I am is my public speaking ability. And you children are way ahead of where I was when I was in the 5th grade. So thank you, grand presentation. Teachers, parents, grandparents, wonderful, wonderful job. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Hey, wonderful job, guys. And La Costa Meadows, you guys really brought it, because I got to hear 3 schools this year, and by far, you guys did the best job. The other schools did great too. I'm not going to name the other schools to protect the innocents, but you guys did an excellent job. You should be very proud of yourselves. And every year, the presentations get better. I learn more, and the presentation style and skills, as Director Hernandez mentioned, was excellent. You guys did wonderful. Give yourself a round of applause.
Anything else to close out?
Do we want a photo? You want a photo?
We do.
Sure. Come on up. Students, come on up into the...
And parents, when they're all set up, you guys can come up and take a photo of them.
You want to just come back here?
What's that? Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Figure it out, students. You guys have done this before. I know some of you have played sports. Sometimes the folks in the front will kneel so that it's easier. Boys with pants on is much easier.
Some people left you hanging. Here, I gotta give you a high five. Some people left you hanging.
Push it enough so that everybody can do it.
I would say probably not. But you gotta find a window there.
Squeeze in and say water.
They're still stepping shots, Jim.
Oh, more? Sorry.
Okay, I got my photo, so we're good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you can come back anytime. You don't have to wait for your presentation.
Thanks for having me.
Great job.
When am I taking off?
I'm gonna hand that over to you. Yeah. Okay. We'll wait a little bit. We'll continue on here.
Yes.
Consent items. Does any board member want to poll a consent item? May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Seconded. Motion by Director Hernandez. Thank you. Seconded by Director Grosset. Please vote. Passes unanimously. On to, before I go on to the action items, that was the exciting part of the meeting. Now we get to the, I don't know about this one. I mean, budget. Oh, wait, we got budget.
Go with the children.
Oh. So let's see, as I'm going on here, action item 2.1, adoption of the resolution approving Encino Wastewater Authority's fiscal year 2025 operating and capital improvement budget.
Yeah, thank you, Vice President Penick. As the board's aware, this is an annual process in which, as a member agency of Encina, there's a process where Encina goes through a budget adoption, and then each member agency of Encina has to adopt that resolution for approving that budget adoption. So with that, we have the general manager of Encina, Scott McClellan, here to present the 2024/5 Encina budget.
Welcome. Did you see that presentation before, though? Were you here for the presentations?
Somebody's got a present. I got a presentation.
No, I know. I was saying to the kids. I'm just saying you gotta, you know, they raised the bar, so we're expecting.
Every time this is my
Microphone.
time. This is my third or fourth time. Is it on?
He'll turn it on.
There we go.
Yeah, it's my third or fourth time. There we go. Now I hear it. My third or fourth time following them, and I always think to myself, if I show up and I can't do better than them, which is normal, are you going to approve the budget or not?
We'll see.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk with you about Encina's budget and a lot of other things that are associated with the budget, but primarily the budget. I did hand out at your place This is hot off the press, by the way. Some of you that are on Encina's board, don't tell the other board members that you have it yet. So this is our new 5-year strategic plan that just came out, and you notice it's a trifold in there. It talks all about Encina, the core values, our strategic initiatives, and what this strategic plan is meant to do. So I encourage you to read this and take a look at it. I'm going to leave a few copies behind for the general manager to distribute as well. But if you certainly want more, I'm happy to have some more delivered to you. I encourage you to pass it out because, as you know, Encina is a valuable and integral part of the economy here in North County, and certainly a key player in maintaining the public health for our entire region. So let's talk about that budget that gets that activity done. This is the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. And the budget development process is just that. It's a process. There's a lot of effort and time from Encina's staff's perspective, as well as from our member agency's perspective. General Manager Gumbel there participates and has participated in these meetings as well. And they can be quite interesting. I will add that on there. So there is a lot of back and forth and a lot of time spent from Encina's staff understanding what the concerns of our member agencies are. And so we go through several iterations of the budget. So what you see in the Encina's budget this year is a compromise between Encina's needs and the availability of resources from our member agencies. So a little bit about that budget schedule I kind of talked about. You see lots of activity going here. We're kind of in our home stretch. The Encina board, thank you, Director Pennick and Hernandez, for passing the resolution last month at the Encina board. And now it's at all the member agencies, and it's time for those member agencies to ratify that. And that's what your action is here today. So let's talk a little bit about the budget in a very high level. So last year we had some pretty significant drivers associated with energy, chemicals, natural gas. What we have found this year is that those costs have stabilized. Now, we have different drivers this year, and I'm going to talk about some of those drivers here as we go through this presentation, but those costs are associated mostly with staffing costs, specifically benefits, pension costs, obligations stemming from different labor relations agreements between Encina's employees and the board of directors at that time there. We've also, through that feedback process we talked with the MAM there, we've also found ways of trimming the budget in other places to try and alleviate some of the pressure and stress on the budget there and some of the rising costs. One of those was actually earthquake and flood insurance. And we have elected, and I know we have an insurance person here on the board, and we've elected this year to drop our earthquake and flood insurance. And that's primarily because we've spent quite a bit of money on capital improvements to actually reinforce the facility to mitigate those. So us paying for insurance when we've already spent money on capital improvements to mitigate that is one of those avenues that we've taken to minimize our ongoing reoccurring cost. Also on the capital side, you see on that slide there, the 24-25 budget year has long stood out as a big year for capital improvements. Encina has been ramping up that capital improvements program over the last several years, and we have kind of seen this coming at us. And again, there's a balance between how much can Encina actually get done and produce from a staffing and manpower and perspective, and also how much effort can actually be accomplished on the site there. So we look at that. We also look at, okay, what is the availability of funding from the member agencies as well? And again, we try and balance that capital improvements effort there. So what you see, like I mentioned earlier, is a compromised budget between that. The original budget that we walked in early February with was about $8 million higher than what you see today. So again, that back and forth and that cooperative working with the member agencies to really develop a budget that's acceptable for both Encina and their member agencies. So moving on to the operating section here, what do we look at when we start developing the budget? What we, our executive team here, some of it, this is Aaron Beanon, by the way, our Director of Finance, and Assistant General Manager Saban there, so I apologize for not introducing you sooner, but you know, I was too excited to get going. Well, what we look at from a staffing perspective is how do we hold the line on as much of the controllable costs as we can? And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute there. We also need to be sure we include all of the obligatory requirements that we have. So in other words, the Board of Directors has authorized certain contracts, particularly on the construction side. There may be multi-year contracts. We have to put money in the budget to cover those obligations there. We also ensure that our expenditures support that mission, vision, and values and the strategic plan that I just handed out to you there. So those are some of the key components that we look at on that. Most of the increases are based all on the inclusion of those obligatory requirements and our normal operating costs on there. So when we step back and look at what is the motor or the drivers for this, we have to look at inflation. Inflation is still a primary driver because much of our budget increase is associated with staffing resources and the cost of doing business. So when you talk about inflation, you're talking about, where's the rest of my slide there? There we go. Okay, it's coming up slowly. The last 5 years here, we saw, or I should say 5 years prior to 2019, i.e. before COVID, we saw about a 13% increase in inflation, and this is based on our CPI. The last 4 years, we saw a 21% increase in inflation. So that's a significant uptick, and you'll see where this is coming into play here in a second. And so what we really look at, if you want to put it in today's terms, we're going to use In-N-Out Burger as our example on this. So in 2019, that In-N-Out Burger, cheeseburger, a fry, and an extra large iced tea, which is somebody's favorite over here, cost $6.57, and recently that cost now is $9.75. So a 48% increase. And so when you look at the hamburger example is significantly higher than even the CPI increase there. So part of that is driving the inflation across the board. If you really want to start looking at the labor market again, because I talked about labor being our biggest component of our budget and therefore the highest portion of the increase, what you see historically is that black line is unemployment rate, the green line is the job openings rate. When unemployment is greater than job openings, it's an employer's market. The employers can get labor at a cheaper cost. As soon as those lines cross, which you see right before COVID, there's a little bit of cross, but that difference was fairly small there. It began to switch from an employer's market to an employee's market. COVID hits, things go wild. And then we see post-COVID, we see it's very much a employees market there. That gap is much, much bigger than it's really ever been before. What is happening though, as you see, knows the trend, the lines are beginning to converge again, which is good. That means that the labor market is beginning to soften there. And so we hope in the future to see less impact from labor on our budget than we're seeing now. But again, this budget looks at what happened in the past and tries to project what's going to happen in the future there. So a lot of that labor pressure can be seen through this unemployment versus job openings graphic there. So what does that look like for Encina as a whole there? We have, our budget is broken into a variety of different segments. So we have a series that you look on the far left there, you see a lot of budget elements that are associated with what we call commodity or commodity services there. So you got chemicals, energy, different infrastructure costs associated with it. You got IT services, excuse me, which is going up significantly. You also have some commitments that were made through Encina's tactical plan. And then we've got some other minor revisions. But then you see this personnel, which is the big block in the middle there. The personnel is actually broken up into two chunks here. And I apologize, the animation seems to be not quite working here. Okay, so now they have it. So when you look at the personnel, there is a section of the personnel that is associated with COLA's merit and benefits increase. It's close to about $1 million in personnel increases there. You'll see another section of personnel, which is a reallocation from other buckets. What we did last year when we had this conversation a little more than a year ago, the member agencies asked Encina staff to go back and look at what's the allocation for staffing as it relates to the different cost buckets that exist within Encina. So we have the bucket for our capital program, we have a bucket for our operating program, we have a bucket for our remotes capital or remotes operating. So there's a bunch of different buckets that we have money that's in it. And those buckets are unique and discrete. We can't move money between the two buckets. But what we did is we went back and looked at 3 years worth of time card data to find out, okay, how is the labor allocation actually falling out from a time card data? And so what that told us was that we needed to reallocate about $1 million in labor back over to the operating budget, out of the capital and out of the remotes facility there. So it's that reallocation. This is not new money. It's part of that reallocation is what's driving this overall 10.8% increase in the operating budget. But a large majority of that, about 4% of it, which I'll show you here in the next slide, is really due to that reallocation. Again, not necessarily new money, it's just a different place where the money is sitting in the pot inside Encina there. So the other thing is we have some positions that we have requested. We requested 2 positions this year, one for an engineer and another for an IT or IS, information systems analyst. The engineer position was 100% offset with costs associated from the consulting services program inside the CIP budget. And the IS analyst has a direct impact on our operating budget there. So over the last 3 years, we've seen the San Diego Carlsbad CPI index, which we track closely, has gone up about 6%. In the last year, that's been about 3.8%. So when you take this in context with our next slide, the net operating increase, so this is the real budget increase, is actually a 6.8% increase. And again, all we're doing here is taking out that transfer of labor cost out of those other buckets and into the operating bucket there to better align how we manage our budget and how labor is actually allocated across there. I do want to point out there's the other bracket at the far right-hand side. So that other bracket is what we consider the controllable costs in this. So everything to the right-hand side of that other bracket, so personnel, tactical plan, IT service, chemical energy, insurance there, those are all costs that we as staff cannot necessarily control. They're commodity-based or there's already commitments that have been made. So the rest of the budget in total has gone up by 0.4%. Again, if I can get this up here. There we go, 0.4%. So when you're talking about a $26 million budget for operating, 0.4% represents about $100,000. So that in and of itself, I think, is a real win for Encina and Encina staff as well as the member agencies. When you look at the real controllable costs at Encina this year are going up about $100,000 in a $26 million budget. So it's a very significant point that I want to make there. So when we look at the member agency share on this, we see Vallecitos Water District is outlined there in the red. This is just for the operating budget. It's a $720,000-ish dollar change there. And I often get asked, okay, what's the change? How come we're the biggest on the list there? Well, I'll remind you that last year you were the lowest on the list. Which I don't expect you to remember, but that's okay. I have to remember that. The reason is because actually Vallecitos' flow, strength, and suspended solids coming into Encina has increased significantly over the last year. And this is just part of what we see. We have a defined pie, and some other agencies may be coming down, and Vallecitos may be going up. And so it's that balance between those that often drives that budget increase there for Vallecitos. My guess is next year you'll probably be down at the lowest number again. So it kind of seesaws back and forth. It's pretty typical of what we see at Encina. So let's move on to the capital section there. Again, we have some things that key elements that we're addressing here. We have a confluence, as I like to say, of aging infrastructure renewal, a solids management capacity issue, as well as some regulatory changes that are being forced upon us, particularly from the Air Pollution Control District. We have to include our contractual and policy obligations that we have. And again, the budget supports the mission and vision of the agency as well. So what is driving capital cost? And I'm going to try and click through all of the animations on this slide here so we can kind of look at the whole thing. Oops, too far. There we go. When you look at capital costs across the industry is effectively tracked by Engineer News Record. And this is a graph of the index of construction costs by Engineer News Record, and you see it goes back to January of 2016. What you notice up until COVID is a relatively consistent line. It does some small jumps in it one year to the next, but it's a relatively flat line. If you then look at COVID, you see this dramatic increase. Well, the 6 years before COVID, you had about a 10% increase in construction costs. During COVID, you see a 25% increase in construction costs. And during post-COVID, you see about a 1% increase in construction costs. So what we're seeing in the construction market is a leveling out of this jump. But what this jump really is a reset effectively of that baseline construction cost. We don't expect construction costs to necessarily go down, but we do expect them to flatten out as far as the rate of increase is concerned. So now we've got projects that we had planned for 3 or 4 years ago that in this particular example were $10 million projects because we had them in our CEP program in 2018, 2019. Today, we can expect that same $10 million project to come in close to $13.9 or $14 million. Same scope of work, same order of magnitude for the project, but a significantly higher cost. And so that is part of what's driving the capital program increases across the board there. It's not just Encina that's dealing with it. All of the agencies that I know of are out there dealing with it, including Vallecitos on there. But this was a great graphic that kind of exemplifies, this is what's happening, and this is why we now have a fundamental shift in our baseline for cost. Of that cost for capital improvements, about 62% of it is all in capital expenditures for 6 key projects. These are the bigger projects that are going on in Encina. There are actually 39 projects in total in our capital improvements program, and so the 6 of them make up the 62%. The rest of it is all in the balance of those. So you can see 33 other projects, those projects are much smaller. Digester improvements, this project has been going on for several years. We expect this year to have need funding in the amount of about $5 million. The DAF repair project is on there, primary sedimentation basin rehab, dryer mechanical and instrumentation rehabilitation, CBC, which is an electrical and controls project, and then cogen controls as well. In Encina budgets their capital program on a cash flow based budget. So we only ask for the money that's necessary to complete that 1 year's worth of progress on the projects. So when I come back up here and stand here next year, you're going to see digester improvements back on the list again, and it'll have a different number associated with it because that project will actually finish up next year. CBC will still be up there. Primary set basins will still be up there. And so we budget on a cash flow based budget. This is not the total cost of the project. And this is to allow for the member agencies to maintain control of their own funds for as long as possible. Encina managing the member agency's money is never really a good idea. The member agencies like to manage it their own way, and that's fine with us. But we do need to budget for what we anticipate spending on these particular projects year over year. Moving on to the summary slide. Here's the summary slide with Vallecitos Water District highlighted. Again, the costs for this are associated in accordance with your Unit I ownership values in the plant. And so that's how these are broken out associated with that. So then here's the summary budget with both operating and capital included in that. And particularly for Vallecitos this year, much of the increase is being driven by that operating increase and your portion share of the use of Encina. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. And if I don't know the answer, these two do. So.
Well, thank you. And I was about to say that. I'm glad you brought your A-team with you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Jennifer and Aaron, for being here. Any questions?
I'm sorry, I have some weird, like, intense pain going on, so I'm gonna excuse myself from the meeting. Great presentation, but like, I have no idea what's going wrong with me, but just gotta step outside for a few minutes. Nothing to do with you.
That's fine. No.
Do you need help? Do you need some phone call or anything? Is there a doctor in the
Hopefully
house?
just walk it off, but it's just that.
It's budget pains.
You need a snake grabber.
Painful process.
Is there a doctor in the house? I don't know if there is or not. Just double, thank you, Matthias, for just checking. You have comments or questions?
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate the presentation. Very informative. Your letter of transmittal, transmitting the budget package was very well written and contained a lot of good information in it. The one thing tend to be always concerned about is regulatory pressures on ocean discharges, and I was wondering if you could maybe put some more color behind that.
So when we look down the road and we look at the regulatory pressure that's coming up on the ocean discharge side of things, and I think I mentioned this last year, it's really, we're watching very closely. The state of California, State Water Resources Control Board in particular, is having a lot of discussions right now about nutrient removal for ocean discharges such as Encina. Encina is a secondary facility, so we treat to a secondary level, which means that we don't actually remove any of the nutrients in the wastewater that we discharge there. That's nitrogen and phosphorus. Those conversations that are going on with SCORP, CASA, Clean Water SoCal, the state board and other stakeholders are pointing to a reduction in that. And if we had a different conversation here about what the 10-year horizon looked like, you'll begin to see that kind of an influence on that budget further down in our budget list. In fact, if you get a chance to review our budget, which I imagine is attached to this agenda item, you can turn to the very last page and you'll see a 20-year look ahead about what that expenditure is. And so you look in years 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you'll see that nutrient removal coming into play with that budget. It is going to be big. The problem that we don't know right now what we don't know, which is effectively saying we have no idea what the regulations are going to look like. It could be 50% removal, 75, 80, 100, you know, we don't know. But we are watching that. We actually have staff that's actively participating in those meetings with the state board and CASA and the other advocacy groups as well. Again, we're trying to get in front of it and not be reactive to it.
Okay, thanks.
Any comments? Comments?
Nope,
Nope.
we've seen this.
Any public speakers? No.
No, sir.
Well, I sat through, as you know, many budget meetings and finance meetings, and I appreciate Aaron and Jennifer and all of you for what you, I know it's a big increase. My only question, actually, I don't know if it's for James or for you, you mentioned the increased flow and why our percentage has gone up so drastically. Why is that? Why have we sent more downstream?
Part of it is the wet winters that we've had, and so we've produced less recycled water. So when we produce less recycled water at our plant, that Encina receives more flow. But that's only portion of it's more complicated than that, but that is the indicated driver. So years that we produce more recycled water, we tend to see reduction in costs at Encina, but we're still setting them as solid, so it's not quite a one-to-one.
Gotcha, okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other comments? If not, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
A motion by Director Hernandez,
Second.
seconded by Director Elitharp, and does this cause any issues?
No, but you'll need a unanimous vote, I believe, so.
So if somebody wants to go get a verbal from him, I don't know if we can get a verbal from Director
I think we have.
Grosset? We have
Yeah,
a quorum, we're good here? Yeah. Seconded, please indicate your vote. I don't know, we want to go get a verbal from him or abstain or?
We'll record it as either abstain or absent.
Okay. So I don't know how to proceed with this, but you want to press this button over there to abstain or? Or yes?
Abstaining in it? Just show him it's absent.
You can press that X. There you go. Motion passes 3-0 with one abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Well
you, Scott.
done.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it. Thanks for your help. Glad you're here.
See you next year.
Yep.
Okay, with the kids. Where are we at here? I gotta follow this along, huh? Action item 2.2, Vallecitos Water District Fiscal Year Budget Update. You want 5-minute break?
Yeah, maybe we should take a 5-minute
little
break to
recess?
see if Director Grosset could.
Okay, yeah, I would like to check on them, so yeah, we'll take a little 5-minute recess. Return at 6:07.
Recording stopped.
is 4 p.m. is during business.
It'll be less room or more? More. Okay, I was gonna ask, I don't know. You have to tell me what it is.
And is this Friday, or working hour? Yeah, I mean, I'd rather not. Can we schedule it the following? We still have a couple of weeks, right? Let's reach out and schedule it on the Friday.
Your breathing is out of sync. Yeah, it is, because you're in the ocean, aren't you? No, sharks still going there? Okay, well, that's.
Sorry. Kicking you out or? Yeah.
Yeah.
Boys smell.
My mind will go astray. Yeah.
That's as far as I got. I know questions. I know. Yeah.
Go ahead and report, Director Grosset has left the meeting.
What's going on?
He's left the meeting, he's got pain, so he's gonna go down to Carbon Hall.
Appendix?
No, it's back here.
Yeah. Oh, it's like a full vessel.
Hold on.
It's a budget presentation fatigue, right?
Did it?
Yeah. Yeah, he's like,
You know what, it's exciting.
Wes is up next.
Followed by the letdown.
They don't get paid until they award millions.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna move to approve and just move on.
Director Petty, you need to get some order in this room.
Order in the house. Order.
Anthony, when you're ready, we can start the recording.
Recording in
Escort this
progress.
man out. Welcome back. We're a little recess. Director Grosset is okay, but he's going to head over to get some medical attention possibly. And what do we need to do?
Retake attendance, sir.
So we'll retake attendance now. 3 of us present, 2 of us not. Okay, moving on. Action item number 2.2, Vallecitos Water District Fiscal Year 2024-25 Budget Update.
Yes,
Turn this over to you.
Thank you, Vice President Panic. So as the board recalls, last meeting, we had a full budget presentation. Took some comments from the board. We also went back with the management team, did any refining, double checking the numbers. When I say we, it's mainly these 2 gentlemen here that did that. Today we're here to give hopefully our final budget presentation prior to the anticipated adoption date, which will be the first meeting in June. With that, let me hand it over to the finance team with wearing the medals and everything.
I like that.
So, Wes.
Good evening, Vice President Penick and members of the board. Yes, you noticed the hardware again at the same time. Last year I came into this meeting with also wearing hardware. I'm sad to say, though, that I didn't have what it takes to defend my title. Last year we got the gold, and I was very proud of that, and I brought that in. You'll notice this year that this is silver.
Silver.
Yeah, so a little disappointed in that, but I am happy to say that we kept the medal in the Vallecitos family. So my training partner, Matthias, in the back, beat me by 44 seconds.
Ooh.
Luckily, I was able to trip him, beat him up, and steal his gold medal. So now I have 2.
Well,
Now, we had a good time. It's an annual event for us. Hopefully we'll be doing it for a long time. So there may be, and hopefully there'll be many more medals. But silver this year, and Matthias brought home the gold. He did very well.
Congratulations.
So on to the budget presentation. Okay, so tonight, this is the draft proposed budget. So the agenda for tonight is we're going to talk about, just briefly go over hopefully the budget process and calendar, just to recap again. You've seen it many times. Then we'll talk about the operating expenses for both water and sewer. After that, we'll go into the salaries and benefits. Then we're going to do something a little bit new. We're going to talk about the PERS policy brief. I mentioned it a few times in dealing with the PERS payments this year. We do have just sort of an introduction to the policy that will be brought to the board on June 5th, so that you're aware of what's going to be in it before that. Then after that, Mike will talk about the water sales, purchases, and sewer revenue. Next, Jody will present the capital budget. Then we'll go back to the reserve balances and rating criteria. And finally, the next steps in the budget process. This presentation should be very similar to the next presentation you'll see on June 5th. That one will probably be abbreviated unless there are major changes in this presentation or from the board tonight. So looking at the budget process and calendar, we start our process, well, Ed's group starts in December, the rest of us start in January. But then in February, we update the actuals for the audit and put in the budget versus actual. And on February 29th, we had our first Finance Committee meeting to go over the budget versus actual for the last 5 years. Then in March, we compiled the operating budget and we put together the requests. And on March 21st, we had our second Finance Committee meeting to go over the operating budget requests. In April, we incorporate those requests into the budget, start preparing the draft budget. And on April 9th, we had our third Finance Committee meeting to go over the preliminary salaries and benefits and review the capital budget requests. Then in May, we put together the draft budget. And on May 1st, we brought that to the board for the first draft budget update. Now we are here for the draft proposed budget. We made revisions, refinements to the draft budget. The major changes for tonight, Mike's going to cover most of it, but most of it has to do with water purchases and sales and information we've received from the Water Authority. Then in June, we're going to incorporate any changes from tonight, and then on June 5th, we will be bringing forward the budget for approval and hopefully cross the finish line this year with a silver medal around our neck, unless you can also get the guy who has the gold, then you get both. So this slide here shows page 2 of the budget, which is the overall budget for the year. This is the one-year budget for FY25, fiscal year 25, and the total budget being considered by the board is $120.2 million this year. The top 3 sections are reserve funded, so we'll talk about those towards the end of the presentation. That's the capital, the debt service, and the vehicles and equipment. The rest of it is funded through operations, so we're going to start by going over water operations, and that is $14.7 million this year, or 12% of the total budget, exclusive of water purchases. So this next slide is page 10 of the budget, and it shows the total water operating expenses, including water purchases, is $54.3 million. And it's important to note that $39.6 million of that, or 73% of our entire budget, is for water purchases. So I've said it before, but you can't stress it enough. 73% of your costs come from one source. If they raise their rates, it's difficult not to raise our rates as well. So next slide, this is a summary of page 11 of the budget. It's just a summary of the water operating expenses. And we can see here that the budget for the water operating expenses is budgeted to increase by $3.2 million. And the main reason for that is water purchases is going up by $2.8 million. And otherwise, water operations is budgeted to increase by $431,000, mainly due to increases in transmission and distribution and pumping costs or power costs related to pumping. So back to the home page, which is the total budget. Next, we're going to talk about the sewer operations, which is $17.4 million, or 14% of the total budget. This slide is page 20 of the budget and shows the total wastewater operating budget. And it's important to note that 48% of our wastewater operating budget is for treatment. And I bring that up because most of that is uncontrollable or is recovered through reclaimed water sales. And I say uncontrollable, a lot of it comes from Encina. You just saw their presentation. They bill us, we pay them. We don't have any control over that besides voting on their budget. And then the treatment at Metal Art plant, a lot of those costs related to power or related to chemicals, so that also is uncontrollable.
And this budget includes includes numbers we are already presenting?
Yep, it does. Okay. I mean, yes, not yep, that's not a good one.
Right.
Okay, so looking at the sewer operating budget, this is a summary of page 21 of the budget. And we can see the budget includes an increase of $2.1 million for the year when compared to last year. And the majority of that by far is related to treatment, $1.6 million. If we don't include the treatment costs, the budget increases by about $559,000 or 3.7%. So our internal controllable costs are very low, increasing. And the major increases there are operations increases, and that is actually due to increases in collection and conveyance for labor increase of about $184,000. So next, this is a new slide. I thought it was important we talk about controllable costs and holding line and controllable costs and all that stuff, so I wanted to give a historical summary of our controllable costs. So this shows the wastewater and water operation costs, and wastewater is exclusive of treatment costs. This is the last 5 years, and you can see over the last 5 years, our increases for controllable costs have been very low, and on average have been 4.17%. If we expand that to 10 years, our total increases have averaged 3.9% over the last 10 years. So we've really held the line on our controllable costs and kept them very low. Mike and I were going to look at inflation and compare it to that, but I'm just...
I have 5 years.
And Mike has good news.
No, the 5-year inflation number, just for point of reference, was about 4.53.
So that's just showing how we've held the line on controllable costs. So now moving on to salaries and benefits. We can see that total salaries is budgeted to increase by $697,000 or 5.8%, and that's mainly the result of the COLA increase we're going to have in July of 5% overall. And then benefits is budgeted to increase by $583,000. The majority of this is related to PERS increases of $432,000. You may remember last year we were fully funded, so we didn't have a payment to PERS. This year we do, and that payment is around $400,000, so that's the main reason for the increase. And then in total, salaries and benefits are budgeted to increase by $1.3 million or 7.1% this year. Next, total salaries and benefits over the last 5 years, budget versus actual. The bottom of the slide shows the salaries, budget versus actual, and the top is the benefits. And this slide is important. I know I show it a lot, but it's important to show that we've actually held salaries very steady over the last 5 years, and we've done a good job. I consider it to be a good job. Budget versus actual, because we've been within 1.5% with the exceptions last year, and we were under budget mainly due to turnover and basically turnover of staff. So then that's very important, showing that through efficiencies and scrutinizing positions, we've been able to hold salaries very steady. This slide, again, I won't go through we've reduced the number of staffing that we have over the last 10 years. It's also important to show that not only have we reduced the number of staff we have over the last 10 years, but we are a growth agency. So the number of connections is growing, and as that number of connections grows, we've actually reduced our number of employees per 1,000 connections from 2.75 down to 2.52, and we were the second lowest of any other agency that we surveyed in that category. So showing that we really do more for less, or with less. So next, the PERS policy brief. So we talked about the PERS payments. We mentioned the required payment of about $400,000. That's the minimum required payment on our unfunded accrued liability, or our UAL. What PERS does, and I don't want to get too into the weeds because it gets very complicated, talk to some actuaries and you'll know what I'm talking about. But what they do, you have a new liability each year based on the performance of their investments and what their expectations. And they do something to make it more affordable for agencies and districts, and they ramp the payments. So they tell us we only have to pay 20% of the actual payment required. So say it's your mortgage and it's a $1,000 mortgage. They're only going to ask you to pay $200. They're going to say you only got to pay 20% of that. And you're like, well, but you said it's a $1,000 payment on the 30-year mortgage. The other $800 becomes a new liability. So that's what they do. They basically say that we're going to ramp it up 20%, then 40%, 60%, so your payment doesn't get to the actual payment for 5 years. So what we want to do in our policy brief, and there are two main components to it. The first one, and the most important, is to pay the minimum amount required to avoid that negative amortization. So to eliminate the ramping, we're going to pay the full amount required. So we're going to pay the $1,000 payment on the mortgage to get it paid off over 30 years, not the $200. So that's the first thing we want to do, because we don't want to dig ourselves a hole and have more additional liability every year. The second thing that's being proposed is to maintain a funded ratio between 85 and 100%. Why 85%? It's not necessarily arbitrary, but kind of is. But the thought behind it is that it'll help us maintain or minimize the amount of liability that we have with PERS in order to save on the interest rates, on the interest costs. And those costs, as you know, are 6.8% right now. So it's our highest form of debt that we have. So minimizing that is a good strategy. We're currently within this funding ratio. So the only requirement would be to pay to avoid the negative amortization.
Excuse me, question. I was going to say, would it be good to hold on to that money invested, but no, the cost of the interest is higher than the investment.
Yeah, because the cost is 6.8%, and the negative amortization is also causing additional liability at 6.8% on top of the existing. So we really it's in our best interest to get rid of that negative amortization. We don't need to fund it higher because we're between the 85 and 100, but we do need to pay more than the minimum required. Excuse me. My throat's dry. So the last part of it will be, and this isn't really a component of the policy, well, it is actually, the staff will actually provide updates to the committee and the board during the budget process on an annual basis when we receive the actuarial evaluation. So as we go through this process every year, we'll give you an update and let you know what the required minimum payment is, what we plan to pay. It'll be included in the budget and you'll get those updates every year. So that's the PERS policy brief. As I mentioned, it was brief. Next we go back to the home page, the total budget. And Mike is going to present on water purchases, sales, and sewer revenue.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, Wes. I had to do a brief presentation this morning on the 457, and in putting this presentation today, I realized just how much I really love numbers and how lucky I am. Now, Denise said there's an EAP program that can help me with that, so we'll see how that works out. But right now, I'm really loving what I do. So this is pretty much the same presentation I did last time. I'll stop a little bit on the parts that have changed because we have some updated information from the Water Authority. If you remember the last time I brought in this key heading about the Water Authority's wages, their increase from 16 to 22%. If you remember last time we put in a 13%, that was my placeholder at the time because that was the latest information we had. Now that number has changed to 20% that we kind of know of. So it could change. So just some of the things, they have fixed costs, their increases are being passed through from MWD, member agency detachments, all their pass-through costs. So a lot of the things that are presented to them are also with us, pass-through costs and things like that. So the Water Authority, again, 16 to 22, the revised budget estimate is at 20% now, and those numbers are incorporated into the numbers that Wes already provided. Again, it was 13% 2 weeks ago when we presented. So what does that mean? The difference in that 13, this 20%, is about a $2.3 million additional hit annually for our budget. If they were, now the 20% isn't in stone yet, so if they were to go up to 22, that would be an additional $750,000 hit to the budget annually. So for VWD, what can we do? Well, right now with the Prop 218, we're locked into a maximum of 6.5% increase that we can pass through to our customers. We do have some additional alternatives to look at maybe increasing the pump zone rates, and I do have one slide on the pump zones in a minute, so we'll get to that. So this is a slide that I showed you, and Wes alluded to the 73% of our budget is purchased water. I redid the slide a little bit to incorporate the 20% increase. I don't know if you can see it if I put the cursor there. So the little red line is the old numbers that I gave you. So last presentation was 72.1. With the new numbers, it's going to go up to 72.9. So basically, in the end, it's still going to go pretty much to 75%. So again, a couple of years ago, we were at 70% of our budget was the uncontrollable purchased water. Now it's three-quarters, pretty much going to be three-quarters of our budget. This is the slide that Director Boyd Hodgson kind of asked for, and it's something that I wanted to present last time had I had more time, but it's kind of a matrix to show you what is the effect of our overall budget of each of these categories. So what I did is I pulled out the purchased water and the electricity charges, because those are two main components that we really don't have much control over. We've done some things with electricity, bring in the solar. Ed's group does a good job of the time of use, trying to go off-peak, things like that to try to minimize the effect of electricity. And then the rest is just the operating budget. That includes all the salaries, our contracts, our services, our safety, everything else is lumped into that. So purchased water is 72.9% of our budget. The electricity is about 3.2% of our budget, leaving the rest of the operating budget at around 24%. So then the anticipated increases for fiscal year 25, as we mentioned, purchased water is about 20%. Electricity, and I think it might be a little low at 6%, but that's what we have in there right now. And then the operating budget at around 4%. So then what does that mean on the overall bottom line budget? So what is the budget impact? So for the first line item, it's really just A times B. And this is where I love math, so I'm going to go a little bit slower on here just to kind of show you. The 72% of the budget, if it's going up 20%, you just multiply the two, and that comes to about 14.5%. So what that means, if nothing else increased, our budget would go up 14.6% about, and that's the effect on the consumer, on the customer, basically. So with the electricity at 3.2% going up 6%, that's only a 0.2% increase. So right there, we have a 14.75% increase without considering our operating budget. I know we all want to try to not pass through any increases, but to do that, we pretty much have to cut 60% of our operating budget just to offset that. The operating budget, though, if you multiply that and follow the math, the 23% times 4%, that means it's a less than 1% effect on the overall bottom line. So the total impact on our budget is 15.73%. So again, just want to reiterate, because this is something that Director Boyd Hodgson asked for, and I think Director Grosset seconded, about showing the impacts on each line item. What this really means is the controllable cost from the district has less than 1% impact on the overall rates. So comparing where we are today to what our budget is going to be for next year. So this is for an estimate for the rest of this fiscal year. So we had 9 months. We now have 10 months of actual, but I haven't updated it because it wouldn't have changed that much. 9 months of actual, 3 months of estimates of water sales, the ready to serve, which is the fixed cost, and the pumping cost recovery, along with our purchased water cost. I'll bring in the next slide, which will show you where the budget is. So water sales are projected to go from 28 to 32%. That's incorporating and I asked Wes to mention it first because I didn't want to be the first to mention it, a 19% increase to the customer. Okay, and again, I didn't want to be the first to mention it, so I'll punch Wes right here because he was supposed to mention that.
Put the blue on his collar. He's
Yes.
the first.
So yeah, and expand on that might be going further into it, so I don't want to jump on it if you are, but we mentioned, I think Director Elithar mentioned last meeting that the Water Authority has different options that they're presenting, and all of them end up being, is it 39% over the next 3 years? So we've tried to use that information and incorporate it in our budget and see, okay, if they do 39% over the next 3 years, and Mike and I did several variations of this, what would the district need to incorporate into our budget? And the answer comes out to be, if we can only do 6.5% the first year, the next year we need a minimum of between 16 to 19%. And it just ends up being more favorable to do the 19% or assume, and these are assumptions again, because this is for 26 and 25, the budget that you're considering right now, we're locked into 6.5 maximum. So we have to build future assumptions to do our 5-year plan, and the 19% came out to be the most favorable in that 5-year plan, so that the following year we'd have less impacts on the customers, and the future years we've made up for it, and we don't, even if we can absorb the Water Authority rate increases with minimal impact to our customers. So it's just almost impossible to avoid a big increase when you get 39% coming through to you at 73% of your total costs.
Thank you.
And we are not approving the rates today, so. The ready to serve, so all these rates incorporate some of those increases. The pumping cost recovery, that's the pump zone cost, and I have another slide on that, is expected to double, and I'll get to that in a second. And the purchased water costs are going to go up almost $5 million, and that's that 20% increase being passed on by the Water Authority. So this is the slide that I showed you last time with the water costs at about $38.4 million. That's based on the 13%, as you can see here in the red. With the updated numbers at 20%, at $38.4 million, and Wes alluded to this earlier, is now going to be $39.6 million. And that's only 6 months of an increase. So that's additional $1.15 million for the 6 months, but annually it's about $2.3 million, as I mentioned earlier. So again, the sensitivity analysis, if we were to sell less water, more water, what would happen? A lot of the pressure is also on the water authorities because they're selling less water. And as you know, fixed costs, if you have fixed costs, less water to sell, dividing those two raises the rates. So if we were to sell, if the demand was 10% less, it would be a net hit on the reserves of about $1.2 million. Conversely, if we sold about 10% more water, it'd be a positive on the reserves of about $1.275 million.
And this is 6 months or a year?
This would be a year. This is a year's numbers. And real quick, I mentioned, Jason mentioned the 270,000 lines of data that he does for 5 years. But Jason, do you do that every 10 years? I thought you did it every 10 years. Okay, well, I do this every year, 270,000 lines of data every year.
So we're the same.
Okay. but I'm just a little bitter. So real quick on the pump zones, what I wanted to do is bring in the pump zone rate. So the pump zones, quickly, those at a higher elevation, it costs money to pump that water up to higher elevation. So most of it is an electricity cost. So depending on how many feet of lift, and James, correct me if I miss any words here, but how many feet of lift is how we charge you. Okay, so all of these pump zones, we technically have 10 pump zones, but I believe there's no one in the 10th pump zone as of yet. So right now we have zones 1 through 9 that have meters within those districts, within those zones, I mean. So each of those zones, there's a lift associated with them, and then there's a cost per 100 foot of lift. Results in a rate per unit of water. So for example, just taking North Twin Oaks, Zone 1, that cost comes out to about 32 cents. Now this was a number from 2019. We haven't updated it since July 2019. That cost today would be about 65 cents. So that's where that number is almost doubled for the anticipated revenue for the pump zones. So again, we have 10 zones throughout the district. Last increase was July of 2019 based on per foot of lift. And back in 2016 or 17, when we brought it to the board, the direction was to recover 95% of the electrical only costs. And right now we are covering about 50%. The power cost for these pump zones is about $714,000. The total pumping department costs are almost $1 million. Now that $1 million does not include any capital replacement. I know Director Elletharp, you asked about in kind of an all-in cost. The all-in cost, not including capital, is about $1 million. So before I go on the sewer, are there any questions?
Just a comment on the pump zone issue. I'd like to see this routinely looked at every budget cycle so that we don't get so far behind.
Yeah, so what staff is anticipating, and it's obviously at the board's pleasure, is to bring this forward for board consideration in June, and also for hopefully adoption for July 1st. If that happens, we'll work with BBK on doing a process during the budget cycle. So every year during the budget cycle, we'll also update pump zone charges based on the estimated budget. And in this way, it'll be done annually, and it'll be part of the budget party page process. Okay. So in the future, that's what's anticipated. But obviously, it'll be up to the board to make the final call on that.
Thank you. Right, and the increases recommended at the time wouldn't be arbitrary. They wouldn't be the 4% or 6%. We would actually look at actual SDG&E data, and kind of like we do the ENR with the cap fees, and have it be that kind of methodology.
My understanding is that 95% is kind of written into our policy.
Correct. Back in 2016 or 17, there was about the estimate about 5% is a kind of benefit for everybody for fire protection and flows between things.
Yeah, we have some ability to move water from a higher pump zone down into lower in case of emergency. Gotcha. It doesn't happen often, but we want to provide some acknowledgement of that in the pump zone rate charges.
Okay. Okay, and the sewer is much easier because the costs are pretty stable. So the sewer revenue, and I'll bring in both slides here. Basically, all the revenue is expected to go about 1.5% to 2% increase from our current estimate. There's no real changes. There's no anticipated increases in the sewer revenue right now. The reclaimed water, as Wes mentioned, is just we recoup what we sell to Carlsbad and OMWD. And that's the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Really quick, I'd like to add one point, if I may, sir. So I know this is kind of sobering news with the majority of our costs coming from the Water Authority with such a high, 40% over the next 3 years number. And maybe I'm a little bit too much of an optimist, but when I look at this news also, it's really a tale of two tales. If you look at the Vallecitos control costs and what this board and the staff has done over not just this year, but over the last decade, we've consistently undercut inflationary costs, consistently brought value to our customers, kept the level of service at one of the lowest employees and lowest cost per connection in the county. And if you look at our rates, our current rates relative to everybody else in the county, we're still third or fourth lowest in the county with the highest wholesale water cost of anybody because of our desal commitments. Those are really great accomplishments that I think the board and staff could hang their hat on. On top of that, everybody in the county is going through the same thing that this board is going to be going through when we're looking at rates. So every single agency in the county, so we're all in it together. And unfortunately, that means everybody's rates, the timings may be a little bit off, but everybody's rates are going to increase by a significant amount, at least for consideration. So,
Thank you.
The slide you, excuse me, you showed relative to water rates per acre foot. I see that the desal is almost double. It's 8 and 8 is 16, yeah.
Yep.
Almost double what the Metropolitan is. We're locked into that contract for how long?
25 years. But I think it started in 2018, so we're a few
Oh,
years in.
gee, that's great. Never mind.
2015, thank you.
Oh,
2015.
good.
Hey, 10 years in.
Yeah. We are having discussions with the Water Authority of possibly making some amendments on that contract, but there's no, that'd just have to be something that's mutually agreed upon. There's no contractual obligation for them to agree, so.
Any comments, questions? Questions?
No.
And this is for information, and you provided some great information. So everything's going up, except can you help with, like, Manny Machado's batting average and like Xander Bogaerts' batting average? That's going down. So everything's not going up.
Everybody.
I know you're a baseball guy.
Yes.
Thank you, both of you. Appreciate that. You had another comment?
Oh, yeah, so before Jody starts with the capital program, I did want to say, nice job, Mike, and then talking to Jason, we like a little healthy competition.
That's right. We're almost the same, but I'm a little bit better. I got that. That was a good job.
Mike, you had to go first because he's second place.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll pass it on to Jody.
Thank you.
Where's the cursor? Okay. Okay. So the next piece of the 24-25 budget pie chart is the capital portion, which is $41 million, or 34% of the total budget that will be proposed for board approval in June. And the total 10-year capital project budget used for financial planning purposes is currently $226 million. This is a current year to prior year budget summary of pages 35 and 105 of the budget document. The top portion is the capital project budget summary, and the lower portion is the vehicle and equipment portion. The multi-year CIP amount of $226 million previously mentioned is here, and it is made up of $66.3 million in carryover projects, or the projects that were budgeted for in prior years that have not been completed yet. $123 million for new CIP requests for both carry forward projects and new projects. $36.2 million for future projects that will not be worked on during 24-25, but are included for financial planning purposes only. And then on the far right, you will notice significant changes. New projects are projected to increase by $63.1 million, and future requests by $15.5 million. And the lower section shows $2 million budgeted for vehicles and equipment. This amount includes $500,000 in vehicles that were proposed in prior years, going back as far as 2022, that are being carried forward due to delayed receipt of the vehicles. The remaining $1.5 million is for new requests for vehicles. So in total, the capital budget is proposed to increase by $89.2 million, primarily due to the increase in new CIP requests. And here is a chart of capital projects by function over the next 5 years. Blue bars represent water projects, and the other colors are sewer projects. For the $41 million project total for 24-25, 12.5 million is proposed for water projects, 28.4 for sewer projects, and this amount includes $7.2 million that is budgeted for Encina projects. And then looking forward, that 10-year total in the top right of $226 million, 42.1 million is for the multi-year projection for water projects, and $184 million for sewer projects. And of that total, $32.4 million is for Encina capital projects. And next, Wes will go over the reserve projections.
Thank you, Jody. So now that we have the water, or the operating expenses for both water and sewer, salaries and benefits, and all the CIP, as well as the water purchases and sales, we've got the whole picture put together. So now we can roll it forward into our 5-year plan, our reserve balances and reserve projections. So I know this slide is a lot of numbers, but this is how it all rolls up, and just want to give you sort of a roadmap of how it flows through to those projections. So we start off and we take our beginning balance in our reserves. This is as the end, June 30th, 2024. This is a projected balance of $115.7 million. From there, you add in the excess of revenues over expenses that will be transferred into reserves. That'd be $1.1 million. Then you have all of your non-operating revenues, such as capital facility fees, property taxes, RDA pass-throughs, any debt proceeds we may have, which technically aren't revenues, but can be cash infusions. We have project reimbursements and investment earnings. And this is probably a good time to mention that the investment earnings, because of some initiatives taken by the board and staff this year, investment earnings are actually projected to be $1 to $2 million higher per year as a result of those increased investment earnings, and in total about a little over $6 million for the whole 5-year projection. So significant increases there, and some really additional revenue that we need, I'll say sorely needed. And then after that, we actually put in the expenditures, which are made up of the capital outlay, which we've talked about, of the $40.9 million. The vehicles and equipment of $2 million. Here you'll see the fund PERS UAL, so funding the PERS unfunded accrued liability. We have the $400,000 minimum required payment. This $900,000 is the additional payment that will be required to avoid that negative amortization. We have that built in and coming directly from reserves. And then finally, the debt service costs for our 3 debts, and we'll actually show more about the debt service later. And then after that, you have your projected ending balance for the year. In this case, it's $91.8 million, and then it shows the floor and the ceiling here as well, but I won't get into all that because we're going to show that in graphical form in a minute. But then at the bottom, you can see we calculate our debt service coverage ratio using these numbers, and we're at 393% for fiscal year 2025. Our debt covenants actually require us to maintain 115%, so we're well above that with a 393%. And days in cash is at 455 days. We'll also talk about days in cash and the requirements from the rating agencies later, but 455 in 25, and then you can see in 26 through 29, those numbers are also calculated. So it just flows through for the 5 years, given the 5 and 10 years of information that we have built into the budget. So, and this is actually a summary of pages. I know it's very interesting, so you might want to look it up later. Pages 109 through 114 of the budget if you want to see all the detail to this. Moving on, this is historical reserve balances as well as projected for the next year for 25. So we can see that reserve balances have been increasing, and there was a rather large spike in 2021-22. That resulted from the debt issuance and the cash infusion we got from the 2021 ACOPS. So that money came in, and now we're actually spending those funds. So you'll see it's planned to come down in 2025. Next, we're going to look at the replacement reserves. And Director Elthart, before I go on, I know there was a request last year for us to show capacity reserves on their own slide. That is challenging in a way because capacity reserves don't have a floor or a ceiling. So when we show these slides, we say the floor, ceiling, and then we put the balance in between the two of them. Capacity reserves can go to 0, and hopefully not, but they're funded, as you know, by developer fees and by debt. So we look at those balances and just try to plan so that it doesn't get to 0, and we fund it with either debt or increasing capacity fees before that happens. So they really don't even need to be included in these slides because this is what affects rates, or the replacement reserves themselves. So the replacement reserves for water, the reserve policy says we'll maintain 3 years of projected infrastructure costs plus 6 months of operating expenses in the floor. And this shows the floor is projected to be $23 million in '25 and up to $27 million by 2029. And the ceiling is projected to be, and the ceiling is actually 10 years of projected system replacement costs plus 6 months of operating expenses. And in '25, that amount will be $65 million. By fiscal year 2029, it will be $72 million. So now you can see our floor and our ceiling together, and the next slide will show the balance of our budgeted and projected replacement reserves for water. In 2025, we should be around $32 million based on our budget. And by 2029, we'll be at $30 million, which is above the floor, but within policy limits. So still healthy, and it's important to note that this does not include any assumptions for debt issuance that will affect rates in the next 5 years at least. So this is just, I mean, there are some large rate increases that we've discussed and that are being passed through to us, but we don't have any, hopefully there will be no need for debt issuance because that could be very expensive right now. And then looking at wastewater reserves, replacement reserves that affect wastewater rates, the floor and the ceiling. The floor is $40 million in '25 and $104 million in '25. And that's the only difference between the floor and wastewater and water is that in wastewater, the ceiling is 8 years of projected system replacement costs versus 10 years in water. And the floor and ceiling in 2029 will be $48 million and $102 million consecutively or respectively. And the balances for 2025, the replacement reserves are projected to be $50 million, and by 2029, they should be around $40 million, right at the floor, right around there, but still within policy limits. So as you can see, our reserve levels have come up, but that was with the sort of future forecast and plan to spend them down on projects that we knew were coming. So those are the reserve levels and projected reserve levels. Next, we want to take a look at other rating criteria and things that we look at when making these plans, and I'll stop for questions.
Yeah, I have a question on the previous reserve balance discussion.
Oh, I thought I went back. There we go.
For both water and wastewater, does this assume that all of the capital projects are completed or a historical percentage of what we've been able to complete?
So what we do going through the process is we work with engineering, and we've got projects, and a lot of them are based on the master plan, and they put their numbers together, and then we have discussions about what's the capacity of the district to actually complete these projects. We started this year with about $56 million in 2025, and Jason and finance and engineering, we all worked together, and that number came down to the $40.9 million. So it was reduced by $16 million in saying that and of the 40.9, some of that's in Encina as well, so it's really around $30 million for the district. So we try to get it to a realistic level that we can actually achieve in the plan. And we don't eliminate the projects, because they need to be done and they're costed appropriately. So we really just shift them out to when we think is more feasible time for them to get done, given our capacity to get the workload done.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm glad you had me go back because I forgot to mention something that's important. The wastewater reserves here reflect an assumption for debt issuance in 2027, but that debt issuance is around $13 million, and it should be used for capacity and for reclaim projects. So it will not be funded by wastewater rates. It'll be funded through reclaimed water sales and through capacity fees. There's another debt issuance assumed in 2029 because I think that's when the land parallel outfall gets completed, and it's about $30 million or something to that effect. So if that happens in that manner, and it's a long ways away, so you never know. But if that were to happen, we'd have to issue about $30 million in 2029. And I don't know if that's a capacity project or...
Yeah, that project's 100% capacity.
So again, it would be capacity fees. So then we'd have to look at revisiting capacity fees, raising those, and then issuing debt along with a capacity fee model. So days in cash, as you know, we are surveyed often by Fitch and Standard & Poor's. They come just about every year and ask for all of our financial information, including our financial plan, which is the budget document. And they give us a rating every year based on that surveillance. And you can see here one of the criteria they look at that we're showing you is the days in cash. And historically, the orange line, which is the Fitch AA rating, we've been below it almost every year. But because of our other criteria that we meet, as well as and some of those things are like our service area, willingness to raise rates, our management team, our operating plan, things like that are all considered when looking at the rates, not just our days in cash. So we've been able to maintain that AA plus rating. And also important to note is that 2022 and 23, We actually went above it for the first time, above the Fitch median, to 713 and 703. That resulted from the cash infusion that we got from the $28 million in debt that we issued in 2021. So that immediate cash infusion into our reserves raised our days in cash temporarily, and then we'll be spending it again coming down per our plan. And then I wanted to note that in 2013, we were upgraded to a AA+ rating. We've been able to maintain that rating through 6 surveillances over the years. We had our 7th surveillance in that time frame this year, and I'm happy to say that we're now a AAA. You see the graphics and everything too. It's pretty exciting. So I'm happy to say we're AAA. It's very serious and quite the accomplishment for both the board and the district and staff. So we're hoping to maintain that. I want to do everything that we can to maintain that. And going forward in discussions with Fitch, maintaining the projections you see here of 350 days in cash plus. You'll also notice that the Fitch rating it says AA rating. The 665 is actually the AAA rating. Now we're in the AAA category. It's a higher days in cash median for the AAA rating. So we'll still be below it and farther below it. But in conversations with Fitch, given our criteria and that days in cash, we should be able to maintain our AAA rating. There's some tough times ahead. We all know that. Hopefully, with a good financial plan, we can maintain that rating.
I know I've asked this before, but how does Fitch come up with a days in cash criteria? Is it an average of actual agencies?
That's exactly what it is. So we actually get a report from them every year, and it lists the agencies, and it's an average of the AAA rated agencies.
Okay.
Yeah. So moving on, the next slide is our debt service profile. If I can switch the slide. There we go. So this is actually in the budget as well. This shows the district's 3 lines of debt, lines of credit. It's not credit, it's actually debt that we have. We have a 2008 loan. That's with the U.S. Bank currently, and that is actually based on the SOFR rate right now, and it's currently at 4.16%. We also, and the balance is, I think it's around $2 million. So we've almost got that one paid off, and it will be paid off by 2028. Then we have the 2015 COPS, which are revenue refunding bonds. Basically, a COPS that's been refunded and refinanced. That should be paid off by 2035, and that interest rate is about 5% on that debt. And then finally, we have the Series 2021A COPS, which we issued in 2021. The total all-in cost there, or the interest rate, is 2.24% locked in for 30 years on that debt. So that was quite the accomplishment. We're very proud of that as well. So overall, our weighted average cost of capital is somewhere around 3.7% that we're paying on our debt. So you look at that and you compare it to PERS and say that's 6.8%, then it really benefits us to pay off that higher cost of debt. So there's the circle on that, paying that off. And by 2037, so we're currently around $5 million in our debt service payments. By 2037, that's expected to get down to $1.2 million after we've paid off the 2015. That's under the assumption that we don't issue any additional debt. As you've already seen, we'll probably have to issue debt maybe in 2027 for capacity, and then possibly again in 2029, just depending on if everything goes according to the financial plan currently. So this is how it is right now, but it may change. So that's our debt profile. I'll stop with any questions right now because we're going to go on to the next steps after this.
Keep going.
All right, next steps. So next steps in the budget process. This should go quick. We're going to incorporate any changes from tonight into the recommended budget, and we will bring forward the recommended budget on June 5th for adoption. And with that, budget party page we'll see on June 5th.
Sounds like a party. Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Comment? Yeah.
And when are we going to talk about the rate percentage increase?
So we've already discussed the rate percentage increase. You mean what we're getting from the Water Authority and what we're planning for this year?
Yes.
So the Water Authority is passing through.
Oh, no, not theirs, but ours to our,
yeah, and we're capped at 6.5%. And given that we're going to be incurring, or it'll be 20% increase from the Water Authority, more than likely we'll be proposing the full 6.5% because that's the most that we can do. And we need more. We need about 16%, but we can't do that per our Prop 218.
so we're going to propose a 6% increase to our water rates. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's about 6.5, yes.
6.5. Is there, maybe you know, or maybe you can find out, for every $1 million we save, what percentage what's the percent that goes down?
Luckily, I have a financial analyst who does about 270,000 lines every year that can help me answer that question.
So, let's see, I'm doing it in my head, it's about 20 cents a million, it's about 18 cents per unit of water. That's about $2.20 per customer per month, so 2%.
2%.
So for every million that we reduce the budget, we save 2%, you say?
Of a customer's bill.
Off the customer's bill. So instead of 6, it'd go to 4 if we found $1 million.
No, because what we've said is that it should be 16. So instead of 16, we would have recommended 14 had there not been a Prop 218. So the 6.5 is pretty much.
That's it.
I mean, the board can do as at your pleasure, but I would not recommend anything lower than that. But again, that's up to you guys.
So staff's looking at timing on this and towards the end of the year, because the existing 218 is already adopted. So it's just a matter of having a meeting and adopting 2025 budget, calendar year 2025 water rates. So towards the end of the year, we'll be bringing that forward based on our existing 218. But in the meantime, since we'll have the final numbers from the Water Authority probably this fall, we'll be looking at a new cost of service study. And then in the springtime, hopefully, if the time works out, coming back to the board in the spring of 2025, maybe the summer at the latest, with a brand-new 218 process and an adoption schedule for new rates to not only catch us up, but also forecast and basically catch us up to the rate increases. Because now we'll be looking at 3 years of rate pass-throughs where the district is not collecting the full rate pass-through. The longer that goes, the bigger jump the district will need just to make up that difference. And those meetings and through finance committee and board meetings, we'll also talk about the different levers and different opportunities the district has to help reduce people's monthly bills. So the monthly payment on their bills will be less impacted from these big rate increases.
All right.
And real quick, not to minimize the effect of the rate increase, but we all know what shrinkflation is, right? That 32-ounce thing of Gatorade that you get, no longer 32 ounces, it's 28. The same thing almost applies to our district. Part of the reason why the rates are going up is because people are using less water. So I've always used the 13 units of water, 5/8 meter. Back in 2017 or 18, when I did that analysis, it was 13.2 units of water for the average customer. Now it's about 11.9. So again, not to minimize it, but the average customer is using less water. So in a sense, they're not paying as much. It's kind of disingenuous to say that they're saving money, but their impact wouldn't be as much as if they were using the 13.2 units that they were using 5-6 years ago.
Thank you.
And sorry, just to summarize too, I could have said it better to begin with, I think, but during the budget process, we have certain assumptions built into the budget, but that doesn't mean you're approving those assumptions or those rates. We'll be approving the budget hopefully June 5th, and then probably around October, November, we'll start talking about the next rate increases, which will happen in January 2025.
Thank you. Anything else?
When does the current 218 take effect? Isn't that January 1?
January 1, 2025, yes.
Okay. So just a couple quick things that are on my mind. Sources of revenue, water sales. Reclaimed water, I mean, do we raise those rates? Are we into a contract? Can we raise rates? What's going on there?
Yeah, on my GM update, I'm going to give you a little update on the recycled water agreement.
Okay. And then pump zones, you talked about that a little bit. I mean, that seems like a drop. Is that a drop or?
It's a drop compared to the water authority rates, but compared to our operational costs, it's significant.
Okay. So that's what we're going to discuss as well, the timing on that.
Yep. We're looking at bringing that to the board next month.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Thank you. And this is for information, and you provided a lot of it. Thank you. So I sure appreciate it. Thank you, all of you, for your presentations. Moving on. Where are we at? Reports. General Manager.
Thank you, Vice President Praddock. A few things. So night work starts tonight at 10 p.m. on Las Posas Road from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. to replace a valve. And basically, we're going to be repairing an old temporary repair, but this is part of the steps for that. Also, Palomar Airport Road next week for the Failsafe project. We'll be doing night work on Palomar Airport Road next week. I'll get back to the board on dates and maybe send out an email depending on what that timing is. Some good news, the district has been in, I guess I would say, disagreement with the city of Carlsbad over fire hydrant location, maintenance, and responsibilities since I've started here almost 19 years ago. My 19-year anniversary is actually this Thursday. And we've gotten some good movement. We actually have a draft memorandum of understanding between the city of Carlsbad and Vallecitos Water District that has been vetted by both staff and agreed to by both staff. We're having our legal team take a look at it now to make sure we didn't miss anything. Then this is something I'll be bringing back to the board for adoption and signing of that MOU. The MOU allows for Carlsbad to operate, not to maintain and pay for the cost of maintenance of the fire hydrants, which is what they've been refusing to do. So they finally, I don't know if they agreed with Vallecitos, but they finally came to terms that the only way those fire hydrants are going to be maintained is if Carlsbad maintained them, since Carlsbad is the one who conditioned them, and Carlsbad Fire is the one who wants them on the system. So that is actually a huge win, although it may be something the board hasn't really been aware of. The second thing is a recycled water agreement. For maybe 4 or 5 years, we've been working with Livenhain and Carlsbad on a new recycled water agreement. The new recycled agreement will be more traditional take or pay with minimums, which allow guaranteed basic income and reimbursement for district expenses for a fixed cost. The management team has been hard working on the recycled water agreement. We've sent what I consider a fairly final draft to both Carlsbad and Livenhain early this week on Monday. I've talked to both their GMs, and their initial reaction is minor edits, but nothing major. So I'm looking forward to bringing a recycled water agreement maybe as early as the second meeting in June. That recycled water agreement also provides us with additional revenue, but it's mainly a guaranteed cost recovery method, but we will get some additional revenue from that. One of the things that I'm sad to announce, and I don't know if I could convince her otherwise, is this is Ann's last board meeting.
What?
She shakes her head. She has already purchased her hopefully forever home, and very happy about it to my dismay. And although she's only worked directly for me for a little bit, I've really enjoyed her integrity, her basic work ethic, her attention to detail, and the fact that she really helps keep the ship running. And I'm sure that all the board members would agree that she definitely helps keep the ships running for you guys with travel and everything else. So this is her last board meeting. She'll be missed. Anthony will be solo for a while. We'll be hiring a replacement, but of course that takes some time. So please be patient and increase the communication with Anthony. As he's doing an excellent job also, but he's not. I don't have two Anthonys right now, so, and I'm losing an Ann. So, also one thing is we're working with Wes on an upcoming finance committee to talk about some of these items, like the PERS policy, audit, and maybe a few other items that may be coming up. We're hoping either maybe by the end of this month. That may not be realistic. Maybe early next month. So we'll try and get one in. If we can, prior to the first meeting in June, but if not, it may be right afterwards. So some of the information may be repetitive from the June meeting, but it's still important to get into the details so we can provide more details in Finance Committee. With that concludes my GM report.
Well, thank you, and congratulations on 19 years. And Ann, really? Where's your dream home? Oh, you are?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, okay.
I can't even call her in to help.
Yeah. Well, I'll save some comments for the end for that, but thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Legal counsel.
Thank you. I do not have a report tonight. GM Compel has asked me to come back next meeting and report on three pieces of legislation, proposed legislation. I think I covered one of them last time, but,
you did, yeah.
but I'll incorporate the others into a report on pending legislation. potentially affecting Vallecitos. So thank you.
Okay. You gonna wear your three-piece suit for that three presentations? San Diego County Water Authority?
Yeah, the board has their next meeting next Thursday, the 23rd, and we'll continue our rate alternative discussions. So should be interesting, but I don't think there's any more surprises. Hopefully not.
And Sina, did you guys meet?
Yes, we had our capital committee meeting this morning, and we discussed a sole source design build authorization for our heat dryer. The heat dryer is a proprietary piece of equipment. They're going to go through and authorize that manufacturer to do a design build for the repair of that. We also talked about the procedure strategy. About a month or two ago, the capital committee was somewhat concerned about the fact that it seems to be a revolving opportunity for the existing contractors on site to take on new projects. So we questioned about, opening up the bids, further broadcasting, further advertisement. They brought back a strategy today that seems to incorporate that and give us perhaps a more competitive edge. And that was the end of the capital committee.
Thank you. Any standing committees? Nope. Any comments? I just have one for Ann. I mean, I was just sad to hear that. Well, thank you. How long have you been here? 10 years. 10 years? Was he a quick study? You left from everything you know? Did you?
I'm leaving my brain with.
Well, good. You're just going to South Carolina with your heart then, huh? Well, thank you truly you have been so pleasurable to work with. I appreciate that. So thank you. Anything?
Yeah, I wanted to second that. Just really appreciate all you've done, and I'm both sad and happy for you. So, a great opportunity, retirement, to be in South Carolina. I'm jealous.
And likewise, Ann, she's always been the one to catch me before I fall. I'm always late for something, but she's there to make sure I get it all done. So thank you, Ann. Good luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Well said. Happy for you, sad for us. Thank you. Anything else?
Yes. Well, this is a future agenda item. Sorry.
Yes. Do you want?
Oh, yeah, future. When are we going to bring back the remodel of the toilet room? Or not?
So that is an excellent time question, as staff just received the bid. So just as a reminder, the engineering committee made a recommendation to go and request a lesser bid for only the ADA component. We've gotten those numbers. Staff is going to be preparing that staff report, bring it to the next board meeting for discussion. The options that I believe will be on the table, I haven't read the staff report yet, but the options I believe will be a smaller project just for the ADA, and there's also a do-nothing option.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, this meeting's adjourned.
All right.